Hello everyone, it's Helen from Journaling Planet, and I'm going to talk you through how I created this photography themed junk journal. I was commissioned by a friend to make it for a Secret Santa. They do a photography Secret Santa giveaway every year online as part of a international Secret Santa. So this was actually going to be given to somebody. So I had to think quite carefully about how I made it, because when I'm making things for myself, I'll use any old glue and I'll sort of say anything will do. But this was going to someone else. So I did use glue that I thought would stay the distance. I used Yoo-hoo glue stick, and I also mixed that with some Elmer's glue as well. I started by cutting some Amazon packaging down to sort of traveler's notebook size. By that I just mean I made it narrow. I wanted to make a narrow journal. And then I started covering it with book page from a collector's annual. And I went to the camera section and cut out those pages and started layering them over the cover so that the cover would be filled with lots of vintage camera images. Just to give you a sense of how long this actually took me in real time, as you can probably tell, it's sped up for your viewing pleasure, but the project as a whole took me about 2 hours. So it's sped up quite considerably because I've managed to whittle this down to 10 minutes. When I was covering the Amazon packaging paper, it became clear that there were going to be some gaps around the bottom and near the top on the inside, which I ultimately just covered with washi tape. I do find washi tape is a good saviour, if you like, when you're looking to cover up some spaces with something interesting that sort of blends with the rest of the design. As you can see, I'm inking around everything because I'm wanting this to have quite a vintage feel to it. Alongside the Amazon packing paper and the book page to cover the cover, and some scrapbook paper with a map design on it to make the plate for the front, I largely just used ink stamps. I was surprised that I had a few photography themed ink stamps in my stash, so that was quite fun to unearth those and actually get them put to use rather than just sitting in a box somewhere. And I also used some square paper for the signatures, and this that I'm using now, perhaps you can see it on the screen, I'm sort of crafting it into a front pocket, is actually the backing paper to a roll of film. I have a friend who is a photographer. He's the one who commissioned me to create this journal, and he gave me this paper to use in the photography theme journal at some point. He didn't know I'd use it in one that I was making for him. It's really cool stuff, and if you know anyone who's a photographer, you could show them this video. I bet they would know exactly what it was, and next time they used it, they could pass it on to you. The only thing that sort of concerned me about it is that it was quite glossy paper, and so I didn't think it would glue down that well. So I actually stitched it using my machine. You could hand sew it if you don't have a machine, onto a piece of paper, and I then glued the paper inside the journal. So there wasn't any need to put glue on the actual backing paper that I was given. I could just glue the piece of paper that it's backed on down to the journal cover. The big issue with really glossy paper is getting it to stick and stay stuck down. Same with plastic. I'm not sure how well you can see, but the little inside pocket there is just secured with a brad and a little bit of string. I put an eyelet in the top of it just so that it could be looped through that. And I'm now measuring the signatures. I used square paper for the signatures because I don't really like to see lined paper going the wrong way. I took the trouble also to individually fold all the pieces in the signature. If I was just making this for myself, I wouldn't bother to do this. It was just because it was going to somebody else. I wanted each crease to be really crisp and in the right place. Then I put it all together for chopping it down. I did take quite some time over chopping it down as well because it was going to somebody else. Again, if it was just for me, I wouldn't have worried too much about getting it super straight and super aligned. Not because I don't have standards, it's just that this is supposed to be a fun craft for me. And if I take too long over these kind of things and I get too perfectionist about it, then I think I would give up on a lot of projects, you know. I just get them as good as I can. And the same is true of this one. I just got it as close to perfect as I could get it. It definitely didn't go out perfect, but it was a pretty close, shot at perfection, I think, in the end. But you can see I'm going back a few times, and I don't think we need to worry about that if we do that in our craft. It's okay to go back a few times until we get the signature where we want it, the size we want it, and also make sure it's just straight to our satisfaction. In terms of putting the signature in as well, I just used some thread that I got from a thrift store. I don't know what kind of thread it actually is, I'm afraid. I think it might be what some people refer to as embroidery floss, but I'm not entirely sure. I'll show you the binding process shortly and you'll see what a meal I managed to make of that. Right now I'm just going through each page and putting a little stamp in the corner or a little embellishment on the side. I didn't want to go overboard because I wanted there to be plenty of place to write. That's something that the brief I was given was that it was for a photographer to take with them and make some notes as they're taking their photographs, perhaps noting down what kind of film they've used or a particular location they want to visit to shoot their photographs, or some wording perhaps that they want to put with the photograph when they share it, either online or in a publication. This little embellishment that I'm making here, that's just a postcard. I got a whole batch of them from a thrift store, and they are sort of old photo booth style photographs on the postcard, and so I just trimmed them down, inked them up and put them into this journal because I just thought it was fitting for the theme, and I thought it was nice to have a slightly different embellishment in some places, besides just ink stamps, much as I love ink stamps, and anyone who watches this channel knows I'm obsessed with ink stamps and stencils, but occasionally it's just nice to put something a little bit different in there. Oh, that was funny. I think that the camera must have fallen off. Everything just goes perfectly sometimes, doesn't it? So it was a little bit of a time-consuming process to put all those marks on the page, but at the end it just looks so lovely. I inked around the end of the signature, and then it came time to bind it. And it was a fairly straightforward process. It would have been more straightforward, I think, if I had decided to do the binding from the inside. As it was, I wanted to do it from the outside. I wanted the bow to be on the outside of the journal, and so I ended up sort of having to go through every piece of paper on its own, and then sort of get it all reshuffled back into place. I'd already made my holes in the actual cover when I got to this point, and it was just a matter of threading the paper from the signatures through, and then getting it all bound together on the outside. There are many videos online showing a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. That is what you need to search for if you want to do this. You can either go from the inside, start from the inside, or start from the outside. Depends on where you want the bow to be. I wanted the bow to be on the outside, so I started on the outside, and then I just tied a bow, a few knots, and then a bow into the outside cover, and that was that. It was all bound together very straightforwardly. It's really cool to look at it now and see how it looks with all these vintage cameras and these little embellishments in. I found a page that I hadn't put an embellishment in as I went through, and so I add an extra stamp shortly. These boxes that I'm cutting up, these are boxes that rolls of film come in. And again, they were given to me by my photographer friend. So again, if you have any friends who do photography, they get a lot of really cool vintage ephemera through their hands, especially if they are film photographers. They are someone to talk to about you potentially getting your hands on the cardstock from the boxes or the backing to the film that they use. And it helps you to create something like a photography themed journal like this. I was just making very quick little tags, backing them with square paper so there were extra writing space for the person who receives this in their Secret Santa. It's really cool to think that someone, I don't know who across the world will have received this last Christmas in their Secret Santa, and without knowing it really, because it just looks like a notebook, will have been introduced to the world of junk journaling quite surreptitiously. The belly band at the back is also made from backing paper, film backing paper, and I just sewed that into place. That was it. It was just 2 little stitches about down each side. And now I'm making the closure. So for this I decided to do eyelets in both the front and the back cover, and thread some brown ribbon, which I thought was in keeping with the overall vintage palette. True to form, I had a last minute bout of perfectionism and decided that I wanted to punch out the corners on the plate on the front, so I had to tear it up and stick it back down again. But I think it all worked out lovely in the end, and if you're looking for a masculine themed journal or a junk journal for men, this would certainly be a really good option. I hope you've enjoyed the video. See you next time.